actually, I think, a little bit easier than the transitivity one that we've done. All right. I bet you that we can start this problem out almost identically to the previous, except we're going to change one thing. Because I think we said if B divides C. So we're just going to have to change that second statement. So here's how we're going to start this out. Okay? Let's let A, B, and C be elements of the integers. Arbitrary, but particular. And remember, you don't have to write that, at least in my class, but somebody else might make you write it. And because it's a conditional statement, what's the other thing that we have to assume?
That A divides B and A divides C.
Nice job. That A divides B and A divides C. Okay, such that A divides B and A divides C. Okay, so I'm feeling that. Once we've defined the variables, what's the next thing that we might do in this instance? All right.
Define the divisor.
Use the definition of divisibility. Define those divisors. Nice. So, by definition of divisibility, there's two things that we could say. Okay? James.
Shouldn't you have before that stated that A cannot equal 0?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We'll put it down here. It doesn't matter when we put it as long as at some point we do. So thank you. Okay. But yeah, you're right. We should have definitely said that A is non-zero at some point. Thank you, sir. So what can we say then as a result of the definition of divisibility for this? Okay, so B equals XA, and then, Greg, you said C equals YA, correct, sir? Yes. Nice. Very good. And then two other things, right? One of which is what Mr. Weber suggested. A cannot be equal to 0. And what's the other thing we should state? X and Y are integers. Nice job. So we're going to say X and Y are integers. And A is non-zero. So let me give you guys a moment to make sure that's okay. Okay, I don't think that's too difficult. I think most of you guys see that and you're like, oh, okay. I get that I have to make sure that it follows that conditional statement, and I get the idea of divisibility. Okay? Basically, guys, whatever's on the right side is equal to the left side times another variable. Okay?
Why are you using x, y? Is that just the number you use?
Oh yeah, you could use beta, theta, you could use zeta, whatever you'd like to, Don. I'm just using x, y because that's what we used in the first example. Okay? All right, other questions, guys? Okay, so now we do the substitution step. Okay, so 2. So by substitution.
Wait, why can't A be 0 again?
Oh, because remember, if we're talking about divisibility, right?
Right.
That means if you divide whatever's on the right by the left, you should get an integer. So let's say I had this statement, 0 divides 5, right? If I was to go through, that means that 5 over 0 should be an integer, but it's clearly not.
I was looking at it as 0 divided by
Right. And that's what happens with a lot of students. They flip the definition.
Because that would have been fine.
Correct, right. Like for instance, if I said this, does 5 divide 0? Sure, that does, because 0 over 5 is 0. Okay, does that make sense now, Andre? Okay, that's all right. All right, by substitution, okay, what are we substituting into, guys? Mr. Wayne. Right. Again, the best thing to do, guys, is look at the right-hand side of whatever it is that we're trying to solve, or trying to prove. Okay, so by substitution, 10b minus 5c is going to be equal to what, please?
10xa minus 5ya.
10 times xa minus 5 times ya. Perfect. We just utilize the step, or the definition from the previous step. Okay, I don't think that's a big deal. I think everyone's good with that. Okay. What are we trying to show? We are trying to show that the right-hand side contains a factor of what?
A.
A. Okay. Well, I mean, it looks pretty obvious it has a factor of A. If we did what first? Factor the A out, right? Guys, isn't there a common factor of A in there? I don't think anyone doubts that. Let's factor this A out as a GCF, okay, just like we did on Monday, right? We did plenty of GCF stuff.
You can also do,
You could also do 5A, you're right. But remember, we're not trying to prove that it has a factor of 5, right? We're only trying to show it's a factor of A. Donnie, if you wanted to, you could do that, and then you would still verify that, okay? It just makes it a little bit easier to ignore everything else, okay? If I was to factor out the A, guys, what are we left inside?
10x minus 5y.
10x minus 5y. And Don, notice that I didn't factor out the 5 just because now I've isolated a factor of A. Okay, and you're right, you certainly could do that. Okay. Do we know anything about 10x minus 5y? It's an integer, right? You want to call it m? Sure, why not? So by closure, we can say that this is going to be equal to A times m, where m is an integer. And check that out, guys. We have shown that 10b minus 5c is equal to am, which is the very definition of divisibility because it contains a factor of a. I'm so excited about it. Even though I've already done this for like 12 years, it's still exciting. All right. So, we're going to say, thus, 10b minus 5c is equal to am and contains a factor of A. I'll get there, guys, wait a second. It's obvious from above. Okay? Thus, A divides 10b minus 5c, okay, which is what we were trying to show by definition of divisibility. I know, too many eyes. Yeah. Don't worry about dotting them. I wish there was a shorthand way we could write divisibility. Okay. Any questions, guys? Okay. Routinely, whenever I give an examination for this stuff, I usually have a divisibility question on the examination. Okay. So, I think now's a good time for you guys to get an opportunity to practice one of these. Okay. So, see if you guys can take about 6-7 minutes, be able to prove that last statement, okay? And we don't even need a C for this one, right guys? So, whoever wrote up this sheet may have inadvertently put a C in there. So if you can forgive that person and just scratch out that C, all right? And go ahead. See, I just reduced your work by 1/3. What's that?
Bad copy.
Yeah, he was a very, or he or she, I'm sorry. That person was a very bad copy and paster. Maybe that person had too many people coming out of his or her office at the time.
Just call either probably Friday.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to know when to pop in there. Okay, that's cool. No rush. And if you need something beforehand, let me know. Besides money.
Thank you.
You know,
Well, I could use that.
couldn't be all. Greg V. You have a nice day, sir. Kind of worried. across. James, can you pass that down to Andre for me, please? I know you could, will you? Maybe I should just say please do it. I just check with you. Hostage.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Mr. R, how may I help you, sir?
I got a question.
I might have an answer.
All right, let's see. Should I do like x to the power 5 then a to the power 4 times a?
Or because you're trying to show that a cubed, you mind if I borrow your pencil? Would this be okay?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Got it.
Something that may or may not be helpful is that a to the fifth is equal to a cubed times a squared. That may or may not be helpful when you guys are doing your proof. Oh, Art, I'm sorry, bro. You should have thrown something at me.
Let's go.
Maybe like one of those 3,000 pens you have there.
It was good.
Does it look good? Let me see. That looks nice. Good. Perfect. That
Cool.
looks great. Nice
Okay.
job. sir.
Thank you.
So Art, how many of those pens and pencils do you really use? in a
All
class
of them.
period? All of them?
Yeah, you know why I help them?
Your loves. in case you lose one?
No, well, I love women in general. So
Oh.
when I say beautiful girl, I give her a pen. Then I say
Oh,
I have a
okay.
hot sister coming, I give her the other pen. Then
Okay.
my other friends come in, I give the other friend. Careful, because
Do you do the same thing with roofies?
whatever I get, whatever I get my hands on.
Did you know that big pens, when they came out in the fifties, I think it was, something like that, they were sold for like 18 or 19 cents a pen.
Really?
They're still that price
Yeah.
today.
Well, I guess back then, though, it was-
Inflation hasn't, right.
it hasn't affected the utensil market, I guess.
Useless fact, but still.
That's pretty neat though, because, I mean, you think like consumer price index affects everything.
And it does, and it did affect the pen. The problem is manufacturing brought down the cost
Right.
of making the pen so much. Yeah.
Now, these are just like the regular big pens, not the fancy ones that
Right.
like make your
Not the
breakfast
ones,
for
no
you.
matter what you go in there, it's gonna cost you $12.
Yeah.
Frickin'
The
even
thing that has the
cheap
pillow
pen.
around it.
Oh,
Yeah,
You can spend over $100.
ridiculous. Okay, guys, let's go through this, and then if you guys have some questions about the assignment 4, I can answer those for you. Okay, so I started out by defining the x, the a and the b. Okay, I said a was non-zero, and of course I had to say that a divides b. Okay, that's crucial to the proof. If we don't say that, we're not going anywhere with this. Okay, I used the definition of divisibility. I said that b was equal to a times x. Okay, and I also said that x was an integer. So, does that look good so far, everybody? That's not fun. Okay. Because we're trying to show that b to the fifth contains a factor of a cubed,